Todd. Good to see you again.
Eric, how you doing?
Doing well. Good morning, everybody. Todd, I think we should start off by figuring out where the crowd's loyalties lie, don't you? How many of you here are English Premier League football fans? And of those, how many of you are Chelsea supporters?
Not many.
Not many. Well, we have some work to do, don't we?
That's the goal.
Ladies and gentlemen, this, of course, is Todd Boelhy of Eldridge Industries. Todd, thanks in large part, I would have to say, to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, you're now part owner and interim sporting director of the Chelsea Football Club. Not your everyday kind of distressed situation, was it?
No.
Chelsea is one of the great franchises in the sporting world, and you're also part owner of the LA Dodgers and the LA Lakers, also among the world's great sporting franchises. What's most different about owning a Premier League franchise versus owning in Major League Baseball or the NBA?
Well, I think the first thing is that it's so global, right? So sourcing, identifying talent is really a global proposition. So you have, markets in South America, all throughout Europe, all throughout Asia, Australia, and it's not regulated at all, right? So dealing with the agents in each market, it's almost like it's a local business on a global scale. So figuring out how to, interpret, understand, and the language barriers are real, right? So that's been an interesting phenomenon. And of course, everyone wants you to pay in pounds as opposed to euros. So there's always currency confusion, which is, and of course, they always end up, they want you to pay them in pounds and you get paid in euros.
Would you say that the English Premier League is is it a freer market in a sense than the market for players here, baseball players, basketball players?
Yeah, I would characterize it as more freestyle. Not necessarily freer, but lots of freestyling. And I think you have to be ready for, all different types of dialogues. You have, the Italian agents that, represent their players, and the Portuguese agents, and there's one or two in each market that has a lot of power. So you have to figure out how to crack into that universe, and also not just pay full retail for everything.
What about the differences between owning in England, different country, than owning in America?
I think that the Premier League is 30 years old this year. And the evolution of how they got to the Premier League and relegation and the full pyramid, I think you have to see the fact that, there's 5, 6 professional leagues in England. And, the Premier League is the top of the pyramid. And every year you have 3 clubs that get relegated and 3 clubs that get promoted. So, there's a giant distinction in that you always have to have a little bit of an eye on, what's going on at the bottom of the table. You also have to think about economics throughout the whole pyramid. And I think that, that's the media strategies. I mean, the Premier League is broadcast in all but 3 countries in the world. So North Korea doesn't get the content, Latvia doesn't get the content, and there's one other country that I'm blanking on. But the global aspect of it, but then the local aspects of it are very real. And I think in England, the Premier League's become the best league. We were talking to Kalidou Koulibaly, who said in Italy, you think first and then you run. In the Premier League, you run as you're thinking.
Thanks in part, I think, to Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
People in this country now know what relegation is all about. and maybe a little bit about the stakes involved. Are you a fan? Do you think relegation is a good thing? And if it is, would it do some good to sports like baseball, basketball, hockey?
You know, it obviously prohibits tanking, right? So I think that, you know, you have no, because of course the economics of going into the first league are materially different, right? I mean, I think the Premier League distributes its media money, and every club gets north of, you know, 200 million pounds or so from the media contract. And when you go into the next league down, the Championship League, you know, that numbers fall off a cliff, right? So there's no one who's thinking about tanking. And those relegation games are some of the highest broadcast games. I mean, ultimately, I hope that the Premier League takes a little bit of a lesson from American sports and really starts to figure out, you know, why wouldn't we do a tournament, you know, with the bottom 4 teams? Why isn't there an all-star game? I mean, people are talking about more money for the pyramid. You know, MLB did their all-star game in LA this year. We made $200 million from, you know, a Monday and a Tuesday. You know, so, you know, I think you could do a North versus South, you know, all-star game for Premier League and fund whatever the pyramid needed very easily.
I have to imagine you've had conversations along those lines with some of your fellow owners. Are they supportive?
Yeah, listen, I think that everyone likes the idea of you know, more revenue for the league. I think that, you know, there's a cultural aspect that you know, is just you know, is real, and I think, you know, I think evolution will come, and I think that, you know, you're going to look, if you look at the Chelsea app, for example, you know, it's way behind the MLB, the Dodgers, that app. Right, so I think that there's going to be a lot of evolution. And the nice thing about the Premier League is you own the worldwide rights, right? So the Dodgers, for example, if we were to take the Dodgers and build revenue streams in Asia with them, the way it works right now is, you know, we only would get 1/30 of the revenue. So there's really little incentive to grow into a global brand from a U.S. sports point of view. But of course, all these rules were written, you know, years ago, when the idea of global distribution, you know, at your fingertips wasn't available.
Todd, in at least one respect, English football is no different from any sport. And what I mean by that, of course, is that the fans, right, the supporters in the local vernacular always know better. And in the case of Chelsea, they're doubly skeptical, right? They're wondering how a bunch of Americans and a Swiss billionaire with no history in the game could possibly know anything about building a championship team. So let's address that skepticism. What do you know?
I think we know people. We know human capital. And I think we understand game plans and strategies. And yeah, we're not expecting to be, you know, the football experts to find the best talent. We're going to put those people in place. And I think it's no different than running any human capital business, where it's all about getting the right resources, making them collaborate, getting them organized, thinking about, you know, how you have, you know, a global business at a local level. So, you know, I think we're going to be continuously adding resources. You know, I think we've been talked about having a multi-club model. I would love to, you know, continue to build out the footprint. You know, I think that, you know, there's different countries where there's advantages to having a club. You know, Red Bull does a really good job. They've got Leipzig and they've got Salzburg, and both of which are playing in Champions League. So, you know, they've figured out how to make that work. You have Man City, which has a very big network of clubs. Mm-hmm. You know, because I think the challenge that Chelsea has right now, or one of them, is that, you know, when you have 18, 19, 20-year-old superstars, you know, you can loan them out to other clubs, but you put their development in someone else's hands, right? So I think that, you know, our goal is to make sure we can show pathways for our young superstars to get onto the Chelsea pitch while getting them real game time. And to me, the way to do that is through, you know, another club somewhere in a really competitive league in Europe. And because of Brexit, you also have to think about, okay, well, how am I going to get these boys, and of course we have the top women's club in the world too, but how are you going to get them into Europe, you know, and so, or sorry, into England because of Brexit. So we need GBEs, which are basically points that you get for playing in different leagues. And the more points you get, the more caps you play, the more national teams that you have, it's easier to immigrate. So our job is to figure out how to put that platform together so that we can get our 18, 19, 20-year-olds, because we have one of the best academies in the world. So if you look at what our academy has developed, our academy is Mo Salah, Kevin De Bruyne, more recently Tammy Abraham, Reece James, Mason Mount, Trevor Chalobah. We have 10 or 11 players right now that are either on loan and controlled by us, or we have the right to buy them back, or they're playing for our team that came from our academy. So what we really need is a place to put our 18, 19, 20-year-olds to develop them somewhere in Portugal or Belgium or somewhere like that, get them the points they need, and also get them out of South America and into Portugal is a perfect place, for example, we think, and then to get them on the pitch in Chelsea.
You just talked a moment ago about the importance of talent and the people whom you need to hire to manage that talent. The decision to sack your coach, Thomas Tuchel, has come as a surprise to many fans and analysts, and perhaps to Tuchel himself, since it came after Chelsea spent some $300 million on new player signings. These people think you panicked, Todd, after losing a Champions League match, against Zagreb. What's the real story?
When you take over any business, you just have to make sure that you're aligned with the people who are operating the business. And I think Tuchel is obviously extremely talented and someone who had great success at Chelsea. Our vision for the club was finding a manager who really wanted to collaborate with us, a coach who really wanted to collaborate. I think there's a lot of walls to break down at Chelsea. And before, the first team, for example, in the academy, didn't really share data. They didn't share information about where the top players were coming from. So our goal is to really bring a team together that with the academy, with the first team, with the incremental clubs that we want to acquire and develop, all of that needs to be a well-oiled machine. And the reality of our decision was that we just weren't sure that Thomas saw it the same way we saw it. And no one's right or wrong. It was just we didn't have a shared vision for the future. And it wasn't about Zagreb. It was really about the shared vision for what we wanted to Chelsea Football Club to look like. And it wasn't a decision that was made as a result of a single win or loss. It was a decision that was made really about what we thought was the right vision for the club.
Todd, since acquiring the Dodgers back in 2012, you and your fellow owners have almost doubled its value to north of $4 billion. Media rights were an essential part of that. Are media rights as important to your plans for Chelsea?
Well, because we have the intellectual property that is global and is ours, it's absolutely a key component. And because we have a global fan base. So developing that fan base is our number one goal, right? To give them things that they can't get anywhere else, right? We're the only place you can go to experience the insides of Chelsea Football Club. And, as we think about what we're going to do digitally with that platform, it's absolutely a direct connection to our fans, the people who care the most, the passion that people have about, football. You can think about it and you can intellectualize about it, but when you're experiencing it, I don't think there's anything like it. And maybe college football would be the thing that I would say is most
here in America.
Here in America, yeah. But it's beyond passion, right? It's bordering religion.
You talked about building a network of clubs, possibly by acquiring a franchise in Portugal or Belgium. How else do you add value to this franchise?
Well, I think you figure out how to make the academy that is so top, collaborate with the first team. You show players the pathway. You teach them about how you're thinking about the future. You treat your players of the academy as academy product, not academy players. So I think you
Is Barcelona the example there?
yeah, La Masia is an amazing. They've done an amazing job. And of course, no one can own Barcelona or Real Madrid, right, or Bayern Munich for that matter. So I think we think that Chelsea is probably the biggest brand that one can own in sports worldwide.
If the Super League or something like it were revived in European football, would you be supportive?
I think Champions League has a big component of that already, right? So you have the best clubs throughout Europe playing in the best competition. And so I think we believe very much that, Champions League has a lot of that. And there's a reason if you win Champions League, you make, over 100 million euros, right? So, you win the Masters and you make a couple $1 million. You win Champions League and you make over 100 million euros.
But you could be playing Barca or Real Madrid or Bayern Munich more frequently.
Yeah, and I think you can do that in the summer, and there's other ways to do that. And I think that the passion that the fans have for the sport and for the sport as it is so strong that it's hard to envision, changing.
Because people want to know. Is that a hard no?
I never say hard no's. I mean, I like to keep options alive, but obviously it's not something that we're talking about at all.
Are there parallels between the rationale for owning sports franchises like Chelsea and the Dodgers and your investments in other businesses that are similarly built around an audience? And I'm thinking about film and TV production, for example, magazines, song catalogs, gaming, restaurants. Are there parallels?
I mean, in the end, you have to deliver products that people want, right, and that people value, whether that's, in film and TV, right? If we obviously, A24 that we founded in 2012, has done an amazing job cultivating audiences and becoming its own brand. People go to watch A24 films. They go to watch A24 shows. The fact that they've been able to cultivate that in a mere 10 years is a real testament to the management team. But yeah, it's about building an audience no matter what you're doing, right? You have to have people who are willing to open their wallets to trade with you.
You're working with Vlad Doronin and his Aman Group on an ultra-luxury property, or at least an ultra-luxury hotel, right, for the property that you own next to the Beverly Hilton in Los Angeles. Is the thesis around high-end real estate the same as your thesis around the scarcity value of franchises like Chelsea?
I think the core is very similar. I think Aman Group, we believe, it opened up now in New York. There's in the Crown Building. The reviews have just been fantastic. We think it's the highest luxury brand out there. The level of quality, the level of service. I think it's unique, and it absolutely is about offering something that is rare.
Evidently, the Aman New York is for sale. Are you interested?
The building itself, the real estate.
That's right.
Yeah. The model there is to have, we own some of the buildings themselves, and I didn't know that was for sale, but Vlad himself owns it. It was so important to him that he put up hundreds of millions of dollars. So I would imagine that he might be thinking about, now that it's up and operating, to diversify a little bit. But I think it's a fantastic spot. It's got really, I think it's got 24 residences in there and 80 keys in the hotel, and they've got 2 really good restaurants. So I would definitely take a look at it.
What about the business of luxury more broadly? We can take it if you need to.
No, I'm good.
Business of luxury more broadly, and I'm also thinking about private travel, right, with your investment in FlexJet, as we head into an economic slowdown and maybe even a recession.
I think people are pricing travel differently, right? I think that the safety, the luxury, I think people are willing to spend more of their budget on travel. So we've been big believers in it, for a while. and the pandemic really accelerated a lot. And I think that, I think people are willing to spend more money on that aspect of their daily lives. We think that there's probably, if you look at the people who can afford to fly private, we think that we basically have 15% penetration. So we think there's a lot of upside in the business.
One of the other consequences of the pandemic is, of course, inflation. We had a CPI print this morning that seems to have scared a few people. There's also a labor shortage. What impact are those conditions having on the businesses in your portfolio?
Well, obviously, the labor shortage is something that I think, whether it's on the engineering side, on fintech, or whether it's, at LPQ, where, we own, the brand in the U.S., it's harder and harder to find talent. We're seeing that change a little bit recently. So I think that, that's been, one of the benefits a little bit of the slowdown. But yeah, finding talent and people that can get jobs done is obviously always the challenge.
Todd, I've left precious little time for your first love, the credit markets. Conditions in credit have changed and terms are beginning to tighten up meaningfully, but there's also the legacy of a decade plus, right, of loose covenants and in some cases undisciplined underwriting in leverage finance. How do you see that playing out in the months and maybe years to come?
It's a continual dance, right, between the issuers and the owners of the risk. So I think it's just it goes back and forth, depending on what the market conditions are and what the demand for the product is. And I just think of it as a dance, and it never ever ends. It just continuously goes back and forth. And again, I think if you look at why I think I like credit so much, and I like being at the top of the capital structure and senior secured, even if there's not maintenance covenants, generally you have a pretty good idea of what the bet is that you're taking, right? And the bet in credit is generally, as long as the business is worth more than your attachment point, you're going to be okay. And it might not be a fun ride, but if you get your money back and you get your rate of return, or even if in a bad situation you get 85 cents on the dollar, that's not a horrible outcome. So I think it's really about just continuously finding businesses, and most credit metrics are backwards looking, and I think most business valuation exercises are forward looking. So you always have to be thinking about, what is this business really worth, and where am I attached to it, and what's the future of the business worth? So to me, that's the number one thing we look at.
You sold your CLO business, CBAM, to Carlyle earlier this year, a very timely transaction for you. As I understand it, there's nothing to stop you from starting another CLO business. Would you have any plans to do so? No,
we're in the process of building one out again, doing it all over. And, I think we would be 2.0 with, a little bit of a different perspective, because the markets have evolved. I think the private credit markets have grown massively, so I think, table stakes are really, you have to be able to, underwrite $100, $200 million chunks. And so we're preparing for, that version of these credit markets again, and excited about it.
How big do you think it'll be by the time you're finished building it?
Listen, I think, it would be sad if it wasn't, 15 billion of AUM again, I think is where we got CBAM to. And, I think the team is excited about the idea of doing it all again. And, so we're working on it right now.
We've seen a huge shift, you just referenced it, toward less syndicated credit, private credit if you like. And as well, the entry of bigger and better borrowers into that market. Does anything stop or slow that trend?
I think the world just continues to grow. And I think that, some borrowers like the idea of having 6 or 7 people to talk to as opposed to 150. And, there's like everything. There's There's very few things that are, just outright good or outright bad. There's pros and cons. And I think people right now are the mindset, like, working through a distressed situation, with, 150 borrowers that, some of which are lenders, sorry, some of which are, not really in tune to the situation, kind of is a challenge, right? There's a herding cat mentality to it that isn't easy. And so I think that again, this is another typical dance. And right now, the mindset is, fewer borrowers. And of course, the big players are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So you've got Blackstone and Apollo and, the KKRs of the world and the Carlyles that are really focused on scale. And they're interested in being able to write, 300, 400, 500, 600 billion, Owl Rock billion dollar exposures, and then syndicate down.
Sadly, we've just about run out of time, so I have one last question for you. Is Chelsea the business of yours you're most excited about? And if it isn't Chelsea, what on earth could it be?
Again, I think that there's to say one's more exciting than another is hard. They all have exciting moments. I will say there's nothing like a goal. I'm still trying to figure out what a goal feels like. And maybe it's a walk-off home run, right? But when you have 3 goals per game, there's not a lot of goals. So the highs of scoring a goal and the lows of being scored on are brutal. And, I think that that's a feeling that I'm still trying to figure out exactly where it sits within the ecosystem of feelings of, but I think maybe a walk-off home run and a goal are similar.
Todd, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Todd Boelhy.